Hey YouTube, how you doing this evening? Tonight we're going to feature a budget gaming build for a family member. Gonna start out with a Ryzen 5 5600X, 6 core, 12 thread CPU, easy on the pocket and easy on power. So that's a good little CPU for him, especially for his needs. Storage wise, gonna go with 2 terabytes of the crucial P3 plus 5000 read write speeds. So that should be more than enough to keep him satisfied. Graphics card wise, he has selected a 3060 12 gig card from Gigabyte. Should be a decent little card for what he's doing, and it's affordable. He got it for under $300. Power supply, Segatep, 750 watt Cybernetics Gold rated. It is fully modular. It does say it has Japanese capacitors. I have used these in budget builds before and had zero issues with them. They're relatively quiet, and honestly, it's not a bad little PSU. So kind of a no name. I haven't heard a lot about them. If anybody has heard anything good, bad about Segatep, please let me know in the comments. Motherboard, we're going to go with the Asus Prime B550 Plus. There's no Wi-Fi on this board, but I will install a Wi-Fi card, even though I recommend for any gamer to run hardwired with an Ethernet cable and enjoy, proper gaming with no lag or latency. Storage wise, I'm going to go with DDR4 3600 speed from Team Group, the T-Force model, 4 sticks of that. And some other little things I can throw in as extras. We're going to make sure our cable management's good, Windows installed correctly. We will be installing an AIO, and he is going to install all of this. Well, I'm going to install all of this into a Montech, that fishbowl case. I forget the name right off the top of my head, but we'll go over that case in great detail. It does come with plenty of fans, plenty of airflow, and it's a good looking case. A little tight in the back as far as cable management goes, but I think we'll be able to make everything work, and it'll look really good. I'm going to get this build going. We'll go to the top-down view and get started. All right, guys. Well, we're off to the races here. So just some basics, a couple things you'll need if you've never built your own PC, which I know can be a little bit intimidating, but it's really simple. And once you do it, you'll always build your own PC. So super simple, a couple tools. If you have an electric screwdriver, one with a smaller head, maybe something with a light, it's really nice. It's even better if it's got a magnetic tip. Can help out a lot with motherboard screws or just doing these smaller items on the motherboard that you may have to install. So it's super important to have the right stuff. You don't want to use your bigger electric screwdriver on something like your motherboard. I have in the past, but I don't recommend it. A good set of side cutters is the best thing ever, especially for zip ties, cable management, anything of that nature. Super important to have these really easy things. An assortment of zip ties as well always helps, and maybe some, the cable ties and everything else, like the little Velcro ones can help for cable management. But a lot of today's cases come with all these things. So on this B550, pretty simple. Sometimes on certain AIOs, we may have to remove these factory tie downs, but the AIO we're going to use actually utilizes those, so we won't have any issues there. First off, I already have the CPU installed, but just so everybody has an idea, here's your lever for the lockdown. There's going to be a small gold square in the top corner. You just want to make sure that that square is lined up with the top square on the motherboard there. There's a little, triangle, not square. And just lock that down. It might make a little bit of a noise, but other than that, it's perfectly fine. Then you would go about installing your RAM, and you just want to make sure that all these are open. Asus motherboards seem to only have the locks on the top, and some other motherboards have bottom locks as well. So just make sure they're all unlocked. And with this system, we're going to run 4 DIMMs, which is absolutely fine on this platform. Some of the other platforms are going to want you to just run these 2 DIMMs. And if you only have a 2 DIMM kit, you're only going to run these gray sections here, not the black ones, so these DIMMs. And it's even marked on the motherboard and in the user manual. So if you look on the motherboard here, I know it's tough to see, but it'll actually show that it has A2 and B2 with little stars beside them. So that would be your preferred method if you had a 2-stick kit. But these are 4 8-gig sticks. They were free for him because they were donations from me, as this motherboard was, and the CPU, and the cooler. And I'm also going to give him a Windows key that I get from SCD Keys, and that's a great place to get keys, and you can use promo codes that are all over the place, and get it for even cheaper, about $16 for a set. So we've got our RAM installed, real simple. Just make sure you push down hard enough and that the tabs are lined up correctly and that you hear the click. As long as you hear the click and everything's in there good, you're good to go. Our next step is going to be to open up this storage, and we'll get that installed. And pop open this crucial really fast. Typically they come with a little screw floating around in there. Not that we're going to need that for this one. And it looks like some paperwork, which is pretty pointless. So I think everybody understands how an NVMe drive works at this point. If not, there's plenty of videos out there that can explain it to you in great depth, but pretty easy. So we're going to run the top slot in this one, and then I already have pulled out of the motherboard case the hold down screw, and I just insert it into the correct slot so I don't lose those when I'm getting ready to build. And you're just going to pop that into that tab. It's going to fit down nicely like that. Take your screw. I like to try to hold down the screw with my finger while I'm getting it all lined up. And look, if you're unsure about this stuff, don't use anything powered. This doesn't have a lot of power to it, but that is really that. The one thing I will do is this motherboard doesn't have any kind of heat sink for the NVMe drives, and you do have room for storage expansion down here, which, so if you want to add another card, you can, and you could run, you can have as many terabytes as you want depending on what your budget is. But I get these little cheapo heat sinks, and they just have a thermal pad on them, and they stick on there all by themselves, and they do drop the temps on the drive pretty substantially. For how much they are. They're like $6 or $7, and it's better than nothing. So instead of, if you can't afford a really high-end motherboard that has giant heat sinks on it, that does make a drastic difference in temperature on the drive. These will help a lot. This motherboard's actually not hateful for its price. I mean, it's a rather affordable motherboard at around $129. It does have stuff for, an AIO pump. It's got plenty fan channels. It does have RGB headers. It's got a 3-pin down here. It doesn't have a lot of them, but at least it has that. It does have 4-pin, but barely anything uses that anymore. The power stages are rather conservative, but for this CPU, it shouldn't be a big issue. And it does have some type of heatsink on them. So that being said, the motherboard is pretty much ready to go. So at this point, we're going to open up the box for the case and start getting this dropped into the case and getting that prepped and go from there. So we will get moving on to that. Well, okay guys, we have this Montech Sky 2 case, plastic off of this, and typically I would be building this on my workbench, but my workbench is full of a water-cooled build right now, so we're just gonna squeeze it on this desktop here and take a look inside the case. First thing I like to do is, sorry if you can't hear me, take my box that my PC case came in, and I set that next to me, and I get all these panels off and set them safely out of the way. Now I will say one thing about this case: it's not a bad looking little case. It has good airflow, and I've done several builds in these cases, but this bottom glass has some little notches right here and here. They need to fit in these tabs, and if you're not holding this case, it says right here, lay case down when removing the glass, which is ridiculous. You're not going to tip your PC over every time, but as long as you're careful with it, undo the thumb screws and just set your glass down in the case, you'll be just fine. They zip tie this accessory box, which will slip out, but if you just snip that, and this is your little box full of goodies. It's going to have your standoff screws and everything else. It looks like this does have standoffs pre-installed, which I knew already. It's got two reverse fans, so they look like they're facing the right way, but they spin intake. And this, I believe, actually is a fan. This is a third fan that's for the GPU, which we will install. And if I'm correct, that's right. This was not the accessory case, my bad. That's your third fan that you get, which is also intake, which I'll place right there to help cool the GPU. And it does have a case fan here in the back that's for exhaust. This case will fit a 360 without any issues whatsoever. I'll slide this forward a little bit. I don't want to scratch my monitor, as I typically would not work like this, but we're constrained on space this evening, so. Okay, just take this bad boy and throw it in the box. Trying to put it up against the glass. Take a look at the back side of this case. See what we got. There's that accessory box we were talking about down here. Okay, so there's that little box full of screws, zip ties, I'm sure some other things. There's an instruction manual here, but we're gonna go ahead and just do it ourselves and go through everything. Inside this little box, I'm gonna tape that all up really good. Got an assortment of little stuff. So we got stuff for 2.5-inch drives. We've got some fasteners for 2.5-inch drives. We've actually got one of the old some stuff from the past in here that people really don't use that much anymore. An assortment full of zip ties, not very well organized. Some hardware we're not going to use. Oh, that's nice. They do include some Velcro cable tie downs, which is nice. Some very cheap feeling zip ties, but they do work. Odd, I've never seen those in there before. That's a weird accessory to have. Anybody knows what this is, which I'm sure some of you older folks do, go ahead and mention in the comments, but I don't want to expose the writing there. But really not used a lot in cases anymore. It's got a couple standoffs for eATX. So actually, this case will support eATX, which is pretty cool. These are the screws for the additional fan, which are like the equivalent of like what you would get with an AIO. So pretty sweet that they have those, and it looks like they give you some spares as well. These are going to be for your motherboard and SSDs. It does come with included power supply screws as well, which you're going to get those with your PSU. These are top, wow, that's interesting. I didn't realize that. Top AIO screws. So if you have a 360 AIO, it comes with screws included. I would use the screws that most likely came with your AIO just to be safe and make sure you have clearance in the right thread pitch. But other than that, they'll probably work out for most. So RGB hub, it is included in here, and it does work rather well, actually. I've been slightly impressed with Montek's cases as of late. I think it's the 903 is a really good case as far as it can house pretty big cooling, like a decent sized radiator, a full 360. It's got 3 140 fans in it and one 140 in the rear, and you can get it in a non-RGB and an RGB model, and they're like 64 to 75 bucks, which is a really decent deal. So moving forward, I think it's to the point where I'm going to drop this motherboard in really fast and get that started. So we'll spin her back around. Now, something that everybody forgets, and there's two things on this case that agitate me a little bit. So one, this back fan cable is kind of blocking where this IO shield is going to go in. And a lot of people forget to put this IO shield in, and then you've got your motherboard in and you're like, oh dude. A lot of people do not even put the IO shield in for cooling purposes. They really don't do anything. But I like to install them just for cleanliness sake, which I am gonna do on this build. So you got this little metal shield, and you just want to look at your motherboard to make sure the orientation's correct for your motherboard, so you're not putting it in wrong. So if you look and see like it's got a USB Type C and another USB port here, and HDMI, and your stuff for Ethernet. So this one is going to go like that. Match up all your speaker ports. Super simple. You're just going to line that up like that and pop that in the case. It's just relatively easy. So you just want to make sure you get it started and it goes in all the way around. Some cases it can be a pain in the butt, but you'll hear a pop And once you know all 4 corners are down, feel around the sides, you've got your back piece in there. Now, the one thing I don't like about this case, as I was saying, they always do this too. Cable management for this back fan is kind of interfering with the motherboard installation, and I like a really clean install. So I typically deal with that now and unzip this. If you can kind of preemptively do some of this cable management on the front side, and these Velcros are really on there, so I like kind of just pry underneath them with something. Just make sure you don't cut any cables. This cable for this back fan, they've got it so snug that it's borderline out of control. And I've tied them up before and made it work, but see, if you just release that, it gives you slack. And then you can tie this cable off up top here, and that is much better looking. So we'll go ahead and just snug this down really quick, like so. All right, so now we've got room up top. So when we put our motherboard in, it's not gonna have interference. And it'll be much cleaner later on when we cable manage this. I will tie this cable up over top of where the IO shield goes. So you wanna take a look at everything, make sure it all looks good. If everything looks good, you're gonna go ahead and start to line this up. And if you look at your standoffs, it will answer a lot of questions for you. And also, you want to make sure, I remember these would actually kind of pop in last time I did one. You want to take a look at this IO shield and make sure nothing is in any of these USB ports or causing any interference. As long as it's not, you're in good shape. And you move forward. So actually the motherboard on these cases will kind of sit there and be decent to you. I've noticed some of the Corsair cases in the past, they actually don't take a any kind of screw in the middle. They just use the center one for like a retention for the motherboard, which is actually kind of smart. The only complaint I have about every PC product is there's so much plastic waste and stuff to open, and you know, you just have to constantly keep throwing the stuff out, which is kind of terrible for the environment and everything else. Some companies get a little better with it, but not much. So I usually start in the center. I grab one of my motherboard screws and just get it started. I don't really go full tight. And then I go diagonal to like an upper corner and to one of the opposite adjacent side lower corner, and just get them all kind of started. And you see that one was being a jerk and fell out on me. So we're gonna grab this little fella and throw him right back in. All right, so that one started and it's close. And I'm gonna go down here to this opposite corner. And it's gonna fight me a little bit. There we go. There we go. Sorry, I got a little quiet. I need to focus and concentrate. I don't want to cross thread anything because I have OCD severe, so it's all gonna be perfect. It is really nice having a lighted screwdriver as well for these, because you can at least see what you're doing. The magnet on this little guy has kind of faded. You can just recharge that with a magnet actually, but it'll be fine. I've done this way too many times. So you're gonna cinch down all your motherboard screws. Pretty simple. And make them tight. I hate when I see people bring in pre-built stuff for repairs and the thing's barely put together. And if you watch some videos on, like, I used to love watching Gamers Nexus, Steve's reviews on pre-builts, because what a travesty. The money you pay for some of these pre-built systems, and they're spec'd with terrible parts, and they're put together even worse or damaged, and it's just awful. That's why I always tell people, that are saying, hey, what's a good pre-built, you know, other than like places like Micro Center, which actually do build an okay PC. I'm not going to say they, you know, produce a terrible product, you know, and there's some other ones out there, but you just pay a tax. You pay so much money when you could do it yourself and do it right, and you know you did it right, and you'll be really happy with it. So now we've got our motherboard fully installed. I am gonna deal with this cable, but I'll probably do it towards the latter end because I want to see where my AIO is gonna go, and how I'm gonna have that routed and some of the cabling. I'm also gonna do some of the cable management now for the power and for you know, anything else that I need to run on the bottom, any of these fan headers, and get those installed really quick. And at that point I will actually we'll open up the power supply and start throwing that in here and getting that done. So we've got a front panel connector here, so that's going to be, which is nice. A lot of the cases just have, like, they're all split apart. This front panel connector is one pin. You just plug it in and you're done, and you'll see you really, if you look at it correctly, you really can't plug it in wrong, which is kind of nice. And you want to make sure when you're routing these cables, you're routing them closest to the header. So I'm very much a stickler about wiring just hanging out all over the place and looking terrible. This is for the RGB header, which is on the bottom of this motherboard, and it's right around here. So we're gonna just throw all this stuff through and we'll pull the slack out later. This is for the, and it even says connect for motherboard for PWM fan. I have noticed with Asus boards, with PWM stuff, even with the controller, they act a little goofy. That's why a lot of times I will run like a splitter. I'm gonna run it on this front channel here, and if you go on, you know, the web and then go into Asus support, it will show you where, you know, all your channels are, so you can optimize your fan curves. Stuff like, you know, if you're running an Intel board, a lot of those new Z690, Z790 boards, they all have like smart fan control and everything else. So it's in Armory Crate. We are going to put Armory Crate on this because he wants to control his RGB. But yeah, it's a love-hate relationship. It's kind of bloatware, but it does control RGB and do some other things. There's, I guess, benefits and downsides to that for sure. So your HD audio plug, that's always going to go over in this corner here. So I'm going to run that over there. This is to power. This is a SATA connector, so we're going to use that to power this hub. And then we've got our USB-C. These B550 motherboards, majority of them, some of the MSIs came with USB-C, but this board does not. So we will not be using the USB-C, but it does have the standard USB that we will be installing. And I'm not going to run that yet, so we'll flip her back around. You'll be flipping the case back and forth several times, so something to get used to. So your front panel connector, you'll notice if you look closely at it, it's hard to see in the light, and I'm not really trying to zoom. I'm just trying to get through this quickly because it's pretty much 1:55 in the morning here. It'll be missing a little spot. So one of these holes is just not there, and if you look at the pin array, it's right next to that header, and you can plug it right in, and that's going to be your power, your reset, and all that good stuff. So that's done. And then I fish the slack down in the middle, and I don't like that twist, so I'm gonna go the other way, twist it around. The front panel writing is up on these Montech boards, so it's helpful. I kind of doesn't make it as clean looking. I'd rather have like no writing anywhere, but this is a basic motherboard, so it really doesn't make a difference. So we got fan headers down here, so we have one channel here, one channel here. I'm gonna run this PWM channel right here. Actually, no, I'm gonna run it closer to the front panel header so I can run that lower fan down here. I mean, I could run it to the hub, but I think I want independent control of this additional fan, and I don't want to put this additional fan in until I get all this cabling done. So we've got our 3-pin RGB header, which is located down here, and you make sure that you're on the 3-pin header, not the 4-pin header. It's almost impossible to mess up, but I guess it could be done if you tried hard enough. And these headers are a little delicate for the RGB headers, so take care when you're installing those, but pop that on. So there you got all your cool RGB stuff, which, you know, more RGB means more FPS, and I'm totally kidding. Front panel connector, same thing. So there's going to be a little blank spot, one in right about that area, and it will match up with the connector, and it is also writing up on this motherboard, which is nice. There you go, that's done. So a closer look, our bottom cables that we need for basic function are done. Moving on next is, that's why we're going to put this power supply in, because I like to get my power in to the CPU here and get my 12 my 24 pin connector in, and this connector in, and my USB in, and try to get those straightened out, and then we'll start throwing the cooler in and go from there. So I'm going to go ahead, flip this bad boy around real quick, and we're going to make room for this power supply. We're gonna open this up. We got our Segotep. Let's do this. Let's take a look at this Segotep and see what comes with it, and kind of do a quick little unbox of this budget power supply. And I will, for some of my other social media platforms, have this build on there and kind of speed it up a little bit. And my camera needs to face a little down on my dirty desk. There we go. Sorry about that, guys. I had to adjust the camera. Feel free to comment to give me any tips, all you fellow YouTubers or anybody out there watching, on anything I can do differently. I'm very new to this. I'm pretty nervous on my first couple videos. I'm not a very social person, but I guess that's normal for PC enthusiasts. So it comes wrapped in a little bag. It says Segotep. It's got some styrofoam padding and all that stuff. I've used these several times, and I've never had anything be a problem with them. You got a power cable, and you get a bag of cables. The cables aren't bad. They're just those standard plastic-looking cables. There is an instruction booklet, but I guess if you need that, you're in bigger trouble. The odd thing I noticed with these Segotep supplies, they come with a jumper, which is something that is more common to like custom water cooling. So if you want to like test your system or like prime your, you have a D5 or a DDC pump, you put these in and you turn the PC on. And I use these a lot, and I actually lose them a lot as well. So I always am grateful to just have a jumper that I can use. So thanks a lot. I don't know who would be putting this power supply in like a really expensive custom water cooled build, but I don't know. So here's the PSU. It doesn't have any kind of like, quiet mode switch or anything like that. There's all the stuff on the side with the ratings. I don't have a lot of info on this. It does have one of those new connectors for the newer GPUs, but it is a lower power rating from what I remember. It does come with a fair amount of cables. I mean, it's really got everything you need. So even if someone's not using it, I always install at least one SATA. But yeah, it's got a 600 watt, 12 volt high power. So oddly enough, and that's a little blurry. This camera is kind of in and out, but it's got a 12 volt high power cable. So it's not like you can run a 4090 on this, but I mean, I guess 4070 Ti, I forget what the power ratings are on a 4080 because I don't have one. I only have 4090s. So for my personal builds, and actually I do have one 4070 Ti, so I lied. We've got Molex, which we will not be using on this build. And you got some of this stuff that you're not supposed to eat. Maybe we'll try that later. Some silica. It's got to be good for you. It keeps the cables all fresh. So I take my 24 pin, start there, and this is where you get your spaghetti mess started. And I do not like the way this 24 pin is set up. And it's odd. On this side, it's like really long going in the PSU, and on this side, it's like kind of a two-piece split. But it's fine. For what we're doing, it's okay. Okay, so yeah, it's a 28 pin going into this back piece. So snap in, make sure it's all good. You're gonna do the same thing with all the rest. So they're all clearly marked at what they are. So this is a PCIe, which we will use. You might not use two PCIes, but I install them and then fold up the one I'm not using, just because if you upgrade, say you get a deal on like a 3080 or something, and you want to swap cards, you can do so. I also can't stand these, you know, jumpers, and I don't recommend using jumpers for any card really. Just if you have the dedicated space to run them, just run a separate cable, especially if you got them. I think it's just silly. All right, so I got both those plugged in, and I'm probably gonna run some extensions. I think I have some cable extensions for the system that I can run. You get a CPU cable, and I believe it does come with, yeah, it comes with two. So if you're running on an Intel build, and it's a little higher power, so you hit a, you know, a 12900K or even a 13700K, you definitely should run. I would run both if you got them, and you can put more power to that. And even some of the higher end, I think AMD stuff has it, so not gonna hurt. We are only going to use one CPU. For this, it does have two ports. Boy, it does not want to go in. Oh, well, you know what? That was silly of me. You got to make sure you got it on the right side. Okay. So plug in your CPU. I like to put that CPU cable to the closest to the outside. Kind of keep everything nice and neat. We are going to use SATA power. Comes with two sets. That's Molex. I'm not going to use that. It does come with a bunch of these Velcros. They're good to save if you know, just need some extra ties. They're not the greatest ones in the world, but they work. I use them for like maybe under desk cable management or in another case, another build. When you build PCs, you start hoarding, and the more you build, I'm sure the more you know, and I'm sure a lot of builders out there watching this and laughing at me are saying the same thing. I've got like a million, you know, cables and whatnot laying around. Okay, so we got one SATA, should be plenty for this system. We'll stash the rest of the stuff, so when you're ready to install your power supply, you should have something that looks similar to this. So you're gonna have a gang of wires, and we're gonna stuff this in the case. We're gonna get the case back up on the bench and get this installed. So let me grab that really quick. Oh, back up with you. At least she's light. Some of the cases, my case is pretty heavy on my personal rig, and it's full of water. And we will go over my system, my personal rigs. I do a pretty decent gaming system I've been real happy with. Full of water cooling stuff. My thing is really, I like custom water cooling a lot. Custom loops. So I know you can't see what I'm doing. On the back side of this, I don't want to move the camera around too much. Back side of this, you got 4 bolts or 4 screws that go in, and they do have like kind of like a socket head to them. So they're different, and they're different thread pitch. I typically grab the ones that come with the power supply and use those. And some cases fit a little different, so but it's kind of hard to mess up. You basically just line them up, get one started, kind of hold it in place, and go from there. I don't go with a wild, heavy screwdriver on those to start. I just get them started and go from there. So we got one going, and 2 down. There we go. We're pretty much lined up at this point. All right, that one's good. And I will whip out the beefier screwdriver for this install, because you need it. There we go. You want these pretty nice and tight. A lot of cases do like have a little foam pad or something of that nature there to kind of help the power supply rest. And I always put the fan down, especially on a case like this. Speaking of which, this case does have a nice little pull-out panel for the PSU, just like a lot of these cases in this price range. There's also a slide for, you know, hard drive sled and all that stuff. Nobody really uses them. A lot of cases I just pull them out, to be honest with you. Recently I'll probably just stuff cables in this and make do with it. I doubt he'll ever run a hard drive, and it's also got, like, I can understand if guys run 2.5-inch drives, but not a lot of people are running like drives anymore, especially with the cost of NVMe's and how cheap they are. It's kind of pointless. Unless you're doing like mass storage, then I totally understand. If you need like a 12 terabyte drive or something, they're way more affordable than it would be if you're running like SSDs. So I'm gonna get this CPU cable routed up here. Oop, and it's gonna try to slip around and fall out, but we'll deal with that in a minute. And you're gonna do a lot of back and forth, so be aware. There's some fan cables here. I'm gonna adjust this camera just a little bit. Sorry guys. And you wanna go ahead and get that eATX 12 volt plugged in. Make sure it's usually a split connector there for most power supplies. You wanna make sure that both sides are plugged in and they haven't come apart, and that's good to go. So that is solid. Let me pause for 1 second. I apologize. And look for some cable extensions. Which, you know what, I think I used my last set of cable extensions elsewhere. But I do have something for the GPU, which I am going to use a cable extension there because I hate those cables with the splitters on the end of them, so we're not going to use that. One thing we can do right now, which we probably should do right now, is get this fan installed. And we got to get this RGB cable all the way up to the top of the case, which we will do. And I think, I'm pretty sure, yeah, we should have plenty of room to reach. We're gonna use the hub as well, the included hub, and just put all these on there. So it's simple for him. He's a young gentleman who is not, new to the PC world. So this is an intake, and we just want to look at our cables and keep them clean. And so if the fan has the cables going this way, you want to look at whatever way is going to be the most minimal exposure to that cable. And that's the way I like to run it. I like to keep cable management as clean as humanly possible. So when you look at your PC, you're all happy. You're like, look at my beautiful PC. All right. So yeah, it's got these longer screws here. Sorry. For this fan. I feel like an idiot talking to myself at 2 in the morning. But I guess getting into YouTube videos now, there's certain, I guess, tech reviewers and influencers and whatever that I really prefer watching over others. And like, I love Dahlwood does tech stuff, is amazing. And one of my good friends, who was a former coworker of mine, had turned me onto him and really got me into PC stuff a good ways back. Dahlwood just like funny and does his own thing, and I'm sure he, there's a lot of production value to his videos. Jay's 2 cents too kind of is goofy and has fun, and I feel like not everything is scripted, and I like that. So I like seeing the mistakes, the screw ups, the calamity. It's fun, it's funny, it's good stuff. All right. Soon we're gonna get the fun stuff like thermal paste and AIOs and all that stuff. Everybody loves thermal paste. So we're gonna get some thermal paste going soon, and a cooler. And we'll put a GPU in this bad boy. And I'm hoping I get this shoot done tonight. But we might run into tomorrow morning, get some eggs and bacon and some coffee in me. I'll probably be a lot more spry. So I'm gonna open this up. Even though I know I'm going to open this up 10 more times. But I'm going to open it up right now. And get these tucked away. Alright, so real simple. You've got 1, 2, 3 extra fan headers here. So if you want to add on, you can. And RGB wise, you've got 1, 2, 3 of those. So I know I'm going to need an RGB header for the AIO, and I know I'm going to need one for this additional fan. So I'm going to go ahead and get those installed here. Okay, there we go. And the fan header's in. And for now, I know I'm going to organize this a little bit better, but I'm still just going to tuck these away for the time being, because it makes me happy. Now, honestly, it's just easier to not have a million cables flying around. And honestly, the cable channel could be deeper on this. When you end up getting your 24 pin, you know, where it needs to be routed up here, it starts to get a little tight in here. And then also with the, I'm doing the same thing I just did. When you start getting the USB and all that stuff, it does get a little tight. So we're gonna take a look, and you're gonna go like so. All right. I mean, honestly, cables aren't that bad looking for, you know, but they're just like the black plastic style cable, but they'll blend in. And this build honestly probably look pretty good when it's done for the cost. I mean, you could build this PC for under $1,000 and be gaming and be way happier, never would be on a console or anything, and you can work off of it and do, you know, you got school stuff, whatever, which is cool. So I mean, there's a reason that I really like PCs, and I'm gonna be a sneaker here. So I'm gonna run this USB cable in on the top port. If I'm gonna have a cable mess, I keep it all in one spot. And you gotta look. Everybody always says like, "Oh, these are so delicate, these USB connectors," and I've never broken one. I've seen motherboards with them broken, but I have never personally broken one because I'm just gentle with it. And you know, get it lined up. There's a tab. You align it, firmly press in it, and if you do that, it shouldn't break. So. Got a bunch of SATA stuff here, so if you want to run SATA drives, now would be the time to push those through. And the motherboard does come with an assortment of SATA cables. Alright, so now this is where this back of this case gets a little bulky. Really got to rip on these things to get it to get cinched down. And honestly, this is one of those cases where you you gotta push it and put it all together, and then you're good. I'm gonna just tie this down for now, and I'll try to spread them a little wide, so at least that way there's a chance of closing the back cover without it being a nightmare, but it will be. And we'll zip tie this down. I don't want to get too deep into this until I have the cooler in. So we're gonna get started on the cooler in a minute and thermal paste application. And curious with you guys, so I am I'm a little bit of a thermal paste snob. There's brands I like and brands I don't. Like Ardix, MX6 is decent paste. I've used Thermal Grizzly for a long time. I used a Cryonaut, but I'm typically on an i9 or, you know, one of the higher end Ryzen CPUs, whatever I'm running, typically like one of the flagships. So temps are usually a thing. I'm gonna run this cheesy looking cable extension here, which I'm not a huge fan of cable extensions, but hey, it's free, kid, so you're gonna get what you get. Yeah, so I don't, you know, what's your favorite brand of thermal paste, guys? You know, mention in the comments. Tell me what you think, what paste you like. My favorites and what I'm going to use on this system, I would either use one or two, either like a Noctua NTH2 because it's got pretty good, decent longevity. The only thing I hate is it really gets like glued on there, like it ends up, especially with this Ryzen platform. You know, it's not like pin array setup, it'll just pull the CPU out with the cooler like every time. But if I run what I'm gonna run on this tonight, which is I use the Kingpin KPX, and I know Jay's 2 cents a big fan of the KPX. That stuff seems to stay viscous for a really long time, and I use it a lot. It's not in my rig right now. Right now, my personal rig, which is on water and a 14900K, is running the Thermal Grizzly Cryonaut Extreme, the pink stuff. The KPX is the blue stuff. I think I have KPX on my graphics card though. On my Asus, I have an Asus. I have a ROG Strix 4090 on a water block. And I'm pretty sure that I am running the KPX on that and the Thermal Grizzly on the CPU, the Cryonaut Extreme. Okay, so he wants a water cooler. So I have a water cooler, and it's a freebie. It's a hand-me-down, but it's good. It's nothing wrong with it. I hate the cable management on it. Because it's kind of a hot mess, but it works, and it's got some okay fans on it. You know, Cooler Master's like, all right, it's not bad. Cooler Master, if you want to prove me wrong and send me something really awesome, I'll take it. Give me something to review. I'll tell you if it's good or not. So it's that Cooler Master with like the Halo fans. And it's got this gangle of mess for RGB connections, which is just a disaster and a train wreck. But we're gonna put it in. So step one is I'm gonna get. It's kind of a pain in the ass because I have to fish in the fan cable through the back and then fish it out. And a 360 on this case is tight. You gotta like kind of go in at an angle. I mean, it fits. It's not terrible. I've seen way worse. And the RGB connector needs to go through here. So you kind of want to. Every AIO is different. Some are really easy. Some are a pain in the butt. This one, they just have this wad of wires that you have to stuff through. And adjust my mic here. Sorry about the noise. I'm bouncing stuff around. But yeah, this one's a pain in the ass. I actually put a fan splitter on this because of the way they had it set up. It's not a bad install or anything, it's just not great either. Easiest coolers to install is Arctic. I mean, like hands down. And honestly, the performance is pretty damn good. I have tried all the Arctic coolers, the new liquid freezer, and the older one I have in a build behind me, in a 14700K build that I got behind me, which I really like that cooler a lot. Actually, it's just Old Faithful. It works. The fans are really quiet. I run Arctic fans in my big rig, in my water cooled rig, so just really quiet. Okay, so at this point, kind of got everything situated, holding everything by hand here, and I'm going to open up some screws and at least get this cooler held in place. And you know, just start at 4 corners. It looks like you can push this cooler pretty far back, and this, you know, if you were to run like an MATX build or something, or yeah, I guess you get further back, but there's a lot of slats on the top of this case for movement. It looks like it would almost house like a 280 without any issue whatsoever. I haven't really looked at the specs on this. I typically just try to get a case that'll run a 360 AIO, just to be safe. I have nothing against like small form factor or anything of that nature. But typically most of the guys that my customers and friends that I'm building for just want a standard ATX build, so that's what they get. Alright, so I got plenty of clearance. These screws, not hitting any fins, looking pretty good. You want to make sure all your screw holes line up before you start just ripping in it. And if these screws are too long, I'm sure a lot of you know, you're going to punch through the rad, you're going to have a big problem. And be leaking some yucky coolant. This AIO actually I've had for some time. It's been sitting on a shelf. I put it in a build way back and immediately upgraded on a smaller build I had. And it's just been sitting there, so it's got like not a lot of usage on it. And it might as well go to a good home. And this kid just graduated high school. He's a really good kid, and I'm proud of him. So we're gonna hook him up. That's exactly what we're doing. Man, it's got a lot of screws for this. All right. You don't really have to put all these AIO screws down if you didn't want to, but it's a lot cleaner if you did. This top cover just goes back on. It's right here. It is got really good ventilation in this case, to be honest with you. So the airflow is really good. They don't have like a dust filter. They just got like a perforated screen. It is this kind of light mesh stuff, like it's on the front of this case. It's not hateful whatsoever. All right, so this can be a little tricky. All right, so there's always a question of which way you want to run your tubes. I'm gonna run them this way on this case. I think it's gonna look better. Right now I'm trying to find an RGB cable, so bear with me. Might have to flip her around, which that's the worst part. When you don't have your workbench, it's right here, I got plenty of room. Okay. Just stuck. All right, so this got a really goofy setup, and you won't be able to fish it all the way through until you're done. So we're at the point now where we need some light. Apologize. Let me move my light. Let there be light. Look at this. Oh, now we're cooking with turkey. Sorry guys, I did not have my light situated right, so it was a little bit of a dark video there. My first YouTube crime. My light sucked, so I apologize. I was just busy, and like I said, it's 2 in the morning, so I'm just kind of doing my thing. All right, so this one header here goes to the AIO pump. It's just gonna give it a single out, and this one is just for RGB, so you can act cool with your friends. So we'll set that down there, and I'm gonna apply some thermal paste. Let's see what thermal paste we got around. Oh Lord, okay. So I just use this Kingpin bag. There's every thermal paste you could possibly imagine in this bag. I got some KPX. We're gonna run that. I could run some Thermal Grizzly. I got this TF7. I got this new TF8. Got some Arctic. I got some NTH2 and some NTH1. I do a lot of Intel builds, and I use those Thermalright contact frames because they're so cheap. In my system, I do have a DeBower's contact frame because I just want to support him as a business. And look, you can have too little thermal paste, but if you got too much, not the end of the world. Doing the kind of X pattern on this one. On Intel, I always take a spreader, and I simply use the spreader and put it all over the IHS, which is an internal heat spreader. And this AIO is a pain in the ass. It's got the standard Ryzen stuff. So with this receiver here, if you leave it loose, it will never line up. So you got to get it like started on one thread, and the same thing with this bottom. So you like unthread it all the way, and it's got like a space where there's no threads, and it goes back to threads. If you just get that one screw on, like one thread started, and then start at the top, clip that bottom, and Hopefully it didn't slip. It almost felt like it did. If it did, you'll know, you'll laugh at me, and I'll have to do it all over again. And then pop this here. Okay, I'm hooked on both sides. All right. So, and then you just start tightening it up. And a little bit of time. And I know you're like, oh, that Cooler Master symbol's crooked. Well, it spins, so it's gonna be just fine. All right. So the bottom hook is started, and it's going. And these are just hand tight. These don't even have any like Phillips heads or anything. 47 minutes this segment, guys. We're deep in a build here. My second video is gonna be like an hour-long build. Okay, so I like to go pretty much tight as shit. Sorry for my language. Jeez Louise, I cussed. All right, I need to bleep that out. All right. There we go. All right, so your cooler's mounted. This spins around, so if you want your Cooler Master symbol the right way, you can just spin it around. A lot of the AIOs do that too. So you want this to look clean as possible. Unfortunately, this motherboard does not have a lot of room to hide stuff for this heatsink. So your pump fan header is the second header in here. I'm gonna see where I can go with it and just see if I can at least kind of hide it away the best I can. So a lot of times I'll just plug it in first and then situate the cable the best I can. So let's see what we can do. I hate every option here. Maybe we can go up high with it. Oh, you bastard. This one RGB cable needs to get pushed up. There you go. All right, so that stuff's out of the way. All right. Heat sinks are good for hiding stuff, so we could hide this cable here and then hide that cable there. Is it beautiful? I mean, the owner will probably think so. Me personally, I'm picky. One day we'll talk about my build and look at it and see what I'm talking about. I'm pretty OCD. And gotta have the bling bling. So, all right. So it's not hateful. We only got two cables coming up, one cable kind of wrapping around. It's clean enough. Point these down. All right, and I didn't even get any thermal paste on my hands. That's incredible. All right. So we're not dirty. We're not a mess. Looks decent so far. We got our fan, this fan's all hooked up. Then we need to do the cabling for this. So what I have to do is get this, there's a gray header there for CPU fan. I gotta get that 3-pin header back through here and then plug it in and clean it up a little bit. So this is what I don't like about this AIO, that it's just a mess. Alright, there we go. That's what I wanted to do. I've installed this AIO, several times, and it came with a really flimsy, kind of cheap splitter, a 3-pin splitter. So I ended up getting one of the thicker ones. The only problem with these thicker PWM 4-pins is that they're just a little tougher to cable manage. Hopefully we can see that header now. We can start spinning this thing around. And it's... Come on, baby. Let's see where we're at. I feel it. So I will say working on a computer is a lot like working on a car. And if you've ever worked on cars, which I was a mechanic for a very long time. Oh, I found you. Okay. It can be a pain in the butt. Alright, so you want, these are the fans that are going to your 360 AIO. You're gonna plug those in. And look, if you had an air cooler, which I was pushing for an air cooler for this build, but He insisted on having water. I would have given him a brand new Scythe, or I have another dual tower that would have been perfect for this, or thermal right, any of that. Okay, so now, regardless of all that good stuff, the 360 IO is functional. We just gotta do the lighting. So this cable is gonna get routed up here, and we match up the 3-pin to the 3-pin, so it's kind of hard to mess up. There's little arrows on them. There you go. Tuck this guy away, and we're gonna undo these again and stuff all this stuff in. And I'll clean up the stuff on the top side too. Right now I'm just trying to get this, keep it neat and tidy as I can as I go. All right. So not terrible, and look, it doesn't have to be perfect, especially for your first build. And honestly, when you see a lot of these gorgeous builds out there, which I have the utmost respect for, where they have like the cabling is, you know, all tied in and bolted down, and it's, you know, all cable mod or like custom cables, and it's awesome. But the thing is, if you change your hardware a lot, or you're like your average end user and say you know you're going to be upgrading, when you do everything super tight, the only problem you have is that if you got to get back in there, you have to undo it all. I love really good cable management, and you know, my rig and my other rig, they're both loops. They're cable managed pretty damn good, and I spent a lot of time on them because I was frustrated with how they had first turned out. But at the same time, if you have to work on it and you got to get in there, you got to cut it all out and put it all back, and it's kind of a nightmare. I mean, my go-to for like, if you're an enthusiast, you're upgrading a lot, which a lot of people are, especially, you know, people watching YouTube. I mean, I have a wall of graphics cards behind me and different things from just upgrades and CPUs and whatever, and testing gear and hardware. Make it easy to work on. Be smart. It doesn't have to be, you know, the Mona Lisa in the back of the case. If you're building a showpiece, yeah, go for it. I agree. All right, so I think we're at the fun stuff. So I'm gonna open up the graphics card. We'll get a look at that thing, and we'll throw it in. Oh. Okay. Now, not that everybody's seen a 3060 at one point, especially if you're watching a PC building channel. But hey, it's always fun opening a brand new card. So let's take a look at a card. I'm not a big gigabyte guy. As far as graphics cards, GPUs go, my favorite for years was EVGA, because everybody knows EVGA and Kingpin and Vince and all those guys. They make the best cards ever. Quite frankly, Hall of Fame's pretty cool too. So unboxing this thing, you know, you get your standard basic box. Honestly, it looks just like all the 4070 cards. Comes in your static bag. You got a quick start guide, which, I mean, you plug it in and that's it. It looks like, fortunately, there's only a little bit of peel on this, and I'm not a big peel person, so I could care less. It looks like, though, they left some peel on here. I'm not cutting up a graphics card. There was just a piece of plastic on there. All right. A lot of people forget to pull these little fan things off, and then they turn all yellow and funky. I don't think it's really gonna hurt anything. They will come off, but I've seen that on so many systems where the plastics are still all on the card when I go to do like a deep clean on somebody's system. All right, so there's your GPU, Gigabyte. It's not broken. All right, thank you. I pull all these HDMI and DisplayPort connectors out now. They're basically junk. All right, so we got a GPU. You know, I haven't actually installed a 3060 in about a year and a half, so And is it? Yeah, it's an OC version, so you can overclock it. You know, the only thing is Gigabytes come with these tiny little fans. I think I'm just used to my big 40 series cards that have like enormous fans on them, which I don't even have fans. I just have a order block. But all right, so we can put a card in this thing, and honestly, these cards are so so light that it probably will not be needing a sag bracket. One thing I don't like about this case, which you probably can't see from here, instead of having thumb screws here for the GPU, it actually just has like screws, which kind of sucks, but it is what it is. I mean, they work, and I guess I need a head on that screwdriver. You could just put thumb screws in it, and you know what? I think I'm going to. I think I'm just gonna grab. I have like a million thumb screws, so I'll just grab some thumb screws. Like, I mean, this is a cheap case, so for, you know, whatever it is, I'm gonna adjust my camera a little bit. How much ever money this case cost, it's not like you can really complain for getting. I mean, you get 4 fans, and it's you know, the glass looks decent, and it's a good looking build when it's done. Okay, let's see how many thumb screws we got in here. We got like 50,000. All right, I'm not giving them my good ones. I'm getting some like mediocres, some decent ones, but not my like crazy good ones. All right, that's not right. I'll give you some Corsair ones. I'm not a giant fan of those. I mean, they're okay. No offense, Corsair. They're not bad. They gotta match though. That doesn't match. I have like thumb screws in this case from every single manufacturer. Quite literally. Like Lee and Lee's, all kinds of good stuff. Alright, I like that. This guy, and nope. Nope. Nope, nope, nope. Jeez Louise. Yeah, that. Okay. You guys will work. Or that one, or that one. Sorry, I am. Oh, sucking it up. I'm probably gonna have to edit this. Alright. So I got a couple I'm cool with. Alright, I can use these. Alright, so GPU installed. There ain't nothing to it. Take your GPU. Make sure this one is this little clip here is pushed down. It doesn't really even have to be. And just push in, you hear the pop, you're good. Grab a thumb screw. This is where I always drop a screw. I don't know everybody else, but I'm going to put these in. There you go. Alright, so you got one GPU. Yeah, one of the screws in. And the second. Alright, she's good. And honestly, it looks pretty straight. Looks decent. It's stable. It's light. It's not going anywhere. Okay. Last thing to do is fish this cable through. So I don't need this cable. It's getting tucked away into the great abyss of wires. And he'll have, if he upgrades to, like, say he gets a different 30 series card, or he goes like AMD and he needs you know, another connector, he's got it. I need to look and see, oh, what side is that connector? The clip is up, so you need to go in this way. Alright, sorry I bumped the mic, apologies. All right. I can see the light. I can see the cable. Okay. All right. A little bit of color, just a little. This is just a spare I had laying around, so it's gonna be a donation. It looks better, so. All right, so we plug this bad boy in. Oh, you son of a bitch! You're not gonna believe it. I'm done. Messed up. All right. This cable, this extension cable. And look, I'm not gonna edit this out. I'm just gonna show the mess up, because why not? This is for CPU. Not GPU. And I need one for GPU. So I'm gonna look for one really quick. Bear with me, friends. I know I have one, and I don't care what color it is, as long as it's not. Oh, there's stupid cables. If not, we can zip tie back, because I don't really see what I'm looking for here. Is that one? Oh, I think I got lucky. Is white gonna work? You know, this cable is so stiff, and I don't know where I got these, but it is a PCIe. I think we're gonna run with it, just for the aesthetics, and I'm gonna fish it through before I even. Okay, there we go. So that's plugged in. A lot of times you just need to plug things in loosely and rework it as you go. So jam it up in there. And because I'm filming this is probably the longest build I've ever done. Usually a build like this take me like, I don't know, 40 minutes total, and I'd already be at post. Okay, you know what, honestly, the cooler master symbol is white. It doesn't look hateful. It's a build from the front. If I look at it on camera, I start losing my mind, but you know what, I think it's not bad at all. All our fans are good, got clearance. It looks like we are at a good stopping point to probably take a break and take my ass to bed and shut all this stuff down and get to work tomorrow and go from there. But it's been fun tonight, and we will start again tomorrow. Talk to you in the morning. Okay, well, we've got the PC all put together. I did add the Wi-Fi card, St. Louis, so gigabyte, Wi-Fi 60 set up, so I just had to run the USB cable and plug it down into the port on the lower side of the motherboard. We're gonna spin it around right now and just finish up cable management, which is really there pretty much. So I'm just gonna kind of hide this one cable, and this is where you have a little bit of a tight grouping in this thing outside the channel, but honestly it's pretty much good to go in the back. I'm gonna add one more zip tie here just for good measure and really call it a day at that point for the cable management in the back, and we'll most likely have a post at this point. This one little zip tie, you know, tight with it. And this is where these side cutters come in really nice, because when you cut your zip tie, they don't leave any sharp edges because of the bevel on these little side cutters. So if you don't have a set of side cutters, you can get them anywhere, like on Amazon, really cheap. Get a decent set though. You'll thank me later. You get a good set of side cutters. You'll be real happy. So right now, I'm gonna throw the back panel on. and see how she fits. So make sure, you know, before you close up your case, make sure you spin all your fans, make sure you don't have anything interference wise, so when you go for that first post, it's not like a nightmare. And just like I said, this case has a slight bit of resistance on the channel, that center channel with the wiring, but it's honestly not bad at all. People that have like a lot of accessories, a lot of RGB stuff, I've seen a lot more resistance, but this pretty decent. So we got back panel on, it's not bulging out or anything, so it looks really good. Cable management's nice and tidy. Go ahead and whip this around. I like to make sure you know, stuff gets dusty even just working on it quickly, but everything looks pretty good. Try to get all our handprints off of everything, you know, all that stuff. There's no stickers on the GPU or anything, nothing left over, no plastic. Go ahead and grab our glass for the front side. You know, if you're gonna, this one has an inside peel, which I know all you really loves all those noises, loves to hear that inside peel, but sorry, I'm just gonna do the outsides. Go ahead and insert that into there. Get our case screws on, and we can peel this glass and start fingerprinting it up. There's the peel, and it also has a front glass peel, and not too hateful. You know, good little build here for real cheap. Let's go ahead and we're gonna start to post and get to that part of it. Go from there. So we're gonna cut scene and go over to post. Okay, so on to the fun stuff. Let's see if this thing will post first shot, and if it does, we'll move on to using this USB flash drive to install Windows, which has the installer on it, which is pretty basic, and I'm sure a lot of people know about already. But we'll go ahead and click on power supply, and we got lights on the motherboard, which is a good sign, so that's looking good. I do have this set up to this little mini monitor, which I use for if I have to buy something out and about, or I'm maybe selling somebody a PC, want to bring something portable with me, so I can kind of walk them through what I've got on the PC. And it's really good if you're like buying like a graphics card or a used system somewhere to have one of these, are USB powered and just run off HDMI. So a good thing to have, but let's fire this thing up. And we've got lights, camera, action. It looks like we're all good. And we should be getting into a BIOS screen shortly here. I did update the BIOS on this motherboard in advance, so shouldn't be any issues there. And there we go, we got a post. So it took a second for some memory training, it looks like, which is very common. So yeah, we got new CPU installed. It's asking me to, enter setup to configure your system. So you're just gonna press F1, and we're gonna go through some BIOS settings that are very basic. But yeah, here we are, we're in the BIOS. We're in the, not in the advanced mode, but in the simple mode. It looks like the CPU's running at 26C, motherboard temps at 19, so it's doing really good. It's identifying the CPU fan, and it looks like everything's on a channel 2, the channel 2 fan header, and the IO pump's running at the right speed. We're gonna go ahead and just go into QFan control, and it's already set to PWM. So we'll just run the optimized all, and this is for your beginner user. Now I'll typically make adjustments on my own systems to have my fan set up the way I want, but I have 18 fans in my PC, so I got a lot going on there. It's gonna do its thing, take about, I don't know, a minute or so. Gives me a chance to get my coffee in me, which I desperately need this morning. Shooting a YouTube video, I had no idea it was going to run so long last night, and I'm sure I I'm gonna edit some things out just to cut down the video a little bit, because at this point it's gonna be like an hour-long video for my second video. But the PC looks good. I think he's gonna be happy with it. And if, you know, we're gonna go through and just check some settings in BIOS and enable some things after we get through this fan calibration. And nothing crazy on this CPU. It's not like Intel where I'm gonna set a bunch of parameters for like PL1, PL2. That's, you know, pretty basic. We could do some undervolting in it, but with these Ryzen 5 5600Xs, I don't see a big gain in doing so. Okay, so got everything all set up. It looks like the fan duties actually stayed right where they were at. Let's make sure, yeah, the IO pump's maxed out. Channel 1 fan, channel 2 fan, looks like what everything else was on. You know, I'm gonna adjust that slightly. There we go. And it's quiet, even with me bumping the fan curves up a little bit. Channel 2 looks like it's kind of locked down. I don't know what kind of environment he's in, if he's in like a really cold environment. It looks like I got an RGB light, like one of the connectors I'm gonna have to play with, but that's not a big deal. I'll do that in a second and get that adjusted and fixed up. But after that, we're gonna hit escape. We're gonna make sure resize bar is on, so that's important. And then we're gonna go into DOCP, or, you know, to overclock the memory, put it at its proper speed, so that puts it at 3600. We'll go over to advanced mode. I don't think there's anything else really I need to play with in here. Everything looks good on temps. So it's showing the proper frequency now. Everything's working. You can go back over to easy mode, and we'll just hit F10. And it's going to show you the changes that you made in the BIOS. So, you know, it's got DOCP on, it's running 3600 speed as it should be. Everything looks good, voltage looks good, DRAM voltage adjusted, 4G encoding, and resize bar. I always turn on resize bar. It's an opportunity for some free FPS with all NVIDIA cards 3060 and up. So we hit OK, and we're pretty much solid. So I'm probably going to shut down this PC after this and go through some on-screen stuff here with Windows. I'm going to get that one RGB fan, get that connector plugged in, because obviously it's popped off, and then we'll go from there, and we'll see you in a second. Okay, so an odd turn of events with this, with that RGB fan being an issue. So I went ahead and corrected it. So that Cooler Master, this AIO, has a proprietary fan harness for the RGB that ties into the pump head, which I'm not a huge fan of, to be honest, no pun intended, because they're small connectors. They don't use a standard 3-pin daisy chain. They have their own proprietary setup. One of those harness connectors had just pulled out, and it was from age, because I had pulled it in out of a really tight build system. So I replaced his fans with some Thermalright fans that I had brand new in stock. So swap those out, kind of, you know, daisy chain the harness together. They all use a standard 3-pin, which is really nice. Honestly, I think they look better than the other fans that were in there that have like the dual halo ring. So I'm not as big of a fan of those, you know, as these fans. And honestly, these are super efficient. So what I'm going to do really quickly is go back into the Q fan control and just re-optimize everything and let it do its thing for a second. And take a sip of my coffee and let it run. And these fans actually, these Thermalright fans are such a good deal, and they got really good reviews from a lot of guys who just review fans, because you can run these things almost at full speed and have very little noise, and they're rather efficient. So they're good for static pressure or just airflow. But with this little CPU, you know, and a 360 rad, it should have no problem keeping this thing nice and cool. And I think they are even a 0 RPM fan, so they will even drop down to not spinning at all. As you can probably see right now, they're stopped and going through their cycle. I'm sure they'll ramp back up, of course, but I've used these fans on a lot of budget builds for, you know, a lot of kids want lighting in their case. So it's a good option for somebody that's like, hey, I don't have a ton of money. It's literally $17, $15 on Amazon for 3 of these fans. And they are PWM 4-pin, so you can control everything. It actually dropped the fan speed on them, which I'm going to turn them up because there's no reason not to on these to make sure it stays nice and cool. Because you can run these things at a pretty high RPM rate and have no noise issues, so which is great. They're really quiet. All right, so we got our pretty RGB fans fixed, and now we're gonna go back over and get ready to install Windows and talk about where I go to get my keys and go from there. But just wanted to show that corrective action that needed to happen. And so far we got a good looking little PC. All right, so now we're gonna go over some simple stuff if you're a beginner to get you all set up for your Windows install after that fan debacle. So first thing you're gonna do is, if you're new to this, you're gonna need to install you're gonna need to get a Windows Media Creation tool. So it's really easy. So just go on Google, hit search. It's gonna show create you know, this first line here, and so you have options. So you're gonna use a USB. Say you're using Windows 10, Windows 11. We're gonna use Windows 10 in this situation, and you'll need a USB drive that has a decent amount of storage. I think it's like 8 gigabytes maybe, and make sure it's formatted for FAT32. I get these from Micro Center, and you can get these actual same ones on Amazon for dirt cheap for a 4-pack, I think. So they're really decent. So let's say we were running Windows 11. It has an assistant, create blah 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 blah. Before you begin, it'll walk you through all this stuff. So USB, external hard drive, basically everything I was telling you. You're basically just going to download that file. I don't like the assistant. It's not what I want. Actually, let me go back. Bear with me. There you go. So there's like the Windows 10 media installation tool. So you'll download that. You'll put it on this drive. It'll take a second, do its thing. And it even has very good details on how to do this. So you go ahead and make that, and you're good to go. Second place I go, so I'm not going to sign in or anything, is go look at what version of Windows you want. So I often do the Windows 10 Pro OEM key codes, and it's VIP SCD key is the site.com, and you can really search for anything. So, you know, they have Windows 11, and I'm on all Windows 11 now. So, you know, you search, and it's going to take you to where you need to go. So there's Windows 11 Pro. You add it to your cart. It's going to ask you to log in at that point. And then when you get to the cart, you can add a promo code, and it'll knock this price down to, I think it's like 16 bucks. Now, most of the time, say you need a Windows, you can go to Windows 10 Pro, which is only 22 bucks. And then after you put in a promo code, and you can see there's a promo code right here. Like there's one right on the screen. To get 20% off, and that's going to knock you down to like 18 bucks. So you can use that code right there, and that's going to put you in a good spot. And you can typically upgrade to Windows 11 from there. On this system in particular, I am going to start on Windows 10 for him. It's what he's familiar with at the time, even though I know Windows 10 Pro's at end of life. and go from there. And that key, typically you cut and paste it. You're going to put it in when you start to get into your Windows install, and go from there. For the Windows install, pretty easy. I will go through some Windows settings that you can, use to optimize your PC. Once you get up and running, you're going to need drivers. So, depending on if you're going to run Armory Crate, it's going to give you prompts to install Armory Crate, but the one that you need to, definitely deal with is NVIDIA drivers. So, you go to your drivers and you're going to find your card. So you're on a 30 series card for this system. It's a 3060. The operating system is going to be Windows 10 64-bit game ready driver. And you search, and then it's going to have a download. You just simply download it, open it up. It's going to walk you through. It's going to try to install the GeoForce Now, which is fine. I use it on my system, and once that's all installed, it will look something like this, which mine's going through the update. It's going to ask me to upgrade to the app. I'm not going to on my system at this point, so I'll hit not now. This is the older setup. The app seems fine. I have it on my other system. Then it's going to take you through updates, some of your settings, drivers. There's your general, so it'll show your build, and everything you got going on. I do enable the experimental features and blah blah blah. It also has some overclocking stuff. Your in-game, you can Alt R and see what's going on over here with your GPU temps and everything else. And you can see it's showing my 4090. I'm not running anything right now, so there's nothing going on. But those are some of the drivers you'll have to install. And then, Armory Crate, unfortunately, is a necessary evil with this board. I mean, you don't have to run Armory Crate by any means. You can just set everything up through the BIOS. But Armory Crate, for the simple end user, does have the stuff to make it a little easier, where it's going to show you updates for certain drivers, SDK service, your motherboard, my graphics card. So I'm on basically all Asus platforms, so I do use it. I haven't had any problems with it. I've had a couple hiccups with it. At that point, when I did, I just, I uninstalled and reinstalled Armory Crate once or twice. I've done a couple clean installs of Windows on my system over the years, but my system's changed dramatically. Like basically every 6 months, I'm changing something. But it does have some good stuff in it as well. He's a younger gentleman. He's going to want to play with all his RGB stuff, so he can go into his RGB effects and, change things to how he likes it or whatever he wants, which is fine. So, we'll go through some of that in a minute, because we're going to go over and get into post with this PC and get drivers going, and kind of just set up from there and see how everything goes with it. And we're going to move some stuff around and get this thing posted up and install Windows really quick. So we'll go ahead and get started on that shortly, and go from there. Okay, so we got everything set up and we're running Heaven Benchmark. This is a 1440p monitor. Right now, before the benchmark's even starting, looks like we're 115 FPS, so looking pretty good. It's using 99% utilization, 9% on the CPU. Averages are looking pretty good, so we're just going to do a quick benchmark and see how this thing turns out. And pardon me, I'm going to open a beverage while I'm sitting here. Again, seeing spikes up to 220, 230 FPS on this 3060, so looking pretty decent. Temps look good. GPU temps at 51, and I got the fans kind of dialed up, but it's quiet enough to where it's not really an issue that I'm seeing. I kind of set my GPU fan curves slightly aggressive. And looks not terrible so far, so I'm gonna let this benchmark run and we'll come right back to it with the end result instead of watching all 26 passes, and go from there. So we'll be right back. Okay, so here is our results. We've got looks like FPS sitting at FPS score 143.6. The score was at 3600. Um, Max FPS at 292. It's a decent score, for this card for this setup. So pretty happy with that. I think it's going to be fine for him. We're going to move on to 3D Mark at this point and go do some testing there. So we'll be right back and get into that really quick. All right, so now we're over at TimeSpy, taking a look and seeing, gonna see how TimeSpy runs on this system, and I think it'll do pretty well. And this is, 1440p testing, so whatever results we get here, it should reflect really well if he's 1080p gaming. So take a look, see how TimeSpy runs, go from there, and then from that point on, I will do Cinebench R23 stress test for a full stress test. I'll probably run a couple of those back to back, but it's kind of boring, so we'll run that. This CPU usually scores around the 10,000 range for all core, and then we'll button this thing up and get it ready to send off to its new owner. So it looks like averaging, around 53 frames per second right now, which is kind of average for this. Just jumped up in the 60s, 70s. Pretty decent. I mean, looks good. I think he'll be real happy with it. TimeSpy is it's a pretty tough test, especially for 3060. So, but I think for games that he's going to be playing, like if he's playing like GTA or like, even Call of Duty, any of these games should run rather well on this PC, and should be a nice little build for him. Let's just let this run and see how it scores. Going into graphics test 2. And it's funny because I'm used to running this test on like my 4090s and some beefier cards, and seeing just how insane the frame rate improvement is on like the newer gen cards, even the like 4070s, 4070 Supers test so much better than the old 30 series cards. But looking good in general. This is all stock clocks. Of course, you can OC this card a little bit, probably grab a couple FPS, but is it worth it in the long run? Probably not really. Um, Temps look good. I mean, it's sitting at 50. PC's pretty quiet. Um, you know, Looking good so far. Test turning out pretty decent, so we'll see. This CPU's not the fastest CPU in the world, but see how long it takes to run the CPU test. Still going. Yeah, my PC actually runs this test in about 7 seconds, and this is at almost 20. So, give you an idea of how cores really help in this benchmark. And it scored right where it should. Um, so it looks good, looks consistent. If you look at the if you look at the graph, a lot of people want to look at 3D marked, their scores, time spy, all that. So, you can see what the average hardware is. The orange line, like, that's the blue line is like your average scores, and like your green line is where you scored. So, you're above average. I'm sure I could get this thing up into, you know, the 9,000 range plus, probably like 9,500 with just some overclocking on the CPU and the GPU. But I mean, honestly, the safe looks good. I'm happy with those results, so I'm just gonna go ahead and close that out and get out of here. And looking pretty good. I think I'm just going to start buttoning this thing up. I'll run Cinebench for a while, and we'll come back when I'm doing the kind of some last minute footage of the PC itself, just some, how this thing turned out, what it looks like, and let's try to wrap this video up because it's going real long. And moving forward, we got a little B-roll with this PC. Looking pretty good. It's got RGB just like the kids like. He should be real happy with this PC. Looks nice, clean, quiet. It should be exactly what he's looking for 1080p gaming. So excited to help him out and get him a nice little build. And this is something, a build you could follow along and spec all these parts yourself and put it together really easy. And I think he's gonna have a great time with this PC for, doing stuff for college, and also playing some games on there, I'm sure, a good bit. But glad to build it for him. And looks like she's all wrapped up and looks pretty good. Well, guys, that's a wrap for this PC. Nice, easy little 5600X 3060 build. I think he's going to be super happy with it. It performed well, it's quiet, cable management's good, and it doesn't look bad. So it should look nice on his desk, and I think he's having a great time gaming with this PC. If you enjoyed the video, please drop a like and follow. We'd love to see you in the future. We're going to have some product reviews for cases, some liquid coolers, some tower coolers, and do some thermal paste testing in the future, and go from there. So it was a really good time. I know the video went a little long, but appreciate you guys, and we'll see you on the next one.